Ever found it challenging to say no even when you really wanted to? Oh, the power of a simple two-letter word. No. It's a small word that packs a mighty punch. And yet, so many of us struggle to utter it when we most need to. Imagine you're at work, swamped with tasks. And yet, when your boss asks you to take on another project, you find yourself saying yes, even though every fiber in your body is screaming no. Or perhaps you're at a social gathering, and someone offers you a slice of cake when you're already stuffed, but out of politeness you take it anyway. This, dear listeners, is the power of no. It's about setting boundaries, about knowing your limits, about respecting your time and energy. But why is it so hard to say no? Well, the answer lies in our upbringing and societal norms. From a young age, we're taught to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace. Saying no is often seen as rude or selfish. But here's the thing, it's not. Saying no is a form of self-care. It's about valuing yourself and your needs. When we say yes to everything, we spread ourselves too thin. We end up stressed, overwhelmed, and burnt out. But when we master the art of saying no, we take control of our lives. We decide what's important to us, what deserves our time and energy, and that's incredibly empowering. Let me share a quick anecdote. Once I agreed to attend 3 different events in one day, simply because I couldn't say no. I ended up rushing from one place to another, not really enjoying any of them, and by the end of the day, I was exhausted and frustrated. All because I couldn't utter that one little word, no. And that, dear viewers, is why learning to say no is a skill worth mastering. It's about more than just saving time or avoiding stress. It's about self-respect, about asserting your needs and wants. It's about owning your power. So the next time you find yourself struggling to say no, remember this: you have the right to choose. You have the power to say no. So, how does one become a master in the art of saying no? Let's delve into that. The first step to becoming a maestro in this art is to be assertive. Assertiveness is not about being aggressive or rude. It's about expressing your needs in a clear, honest, and respectful manner. It's about standing up for your rights while respecting the rights of others. So when you need to say no, say it assertively, not apologetically. Imagine yourself in a situation where your colleague asks you to take on an additional project when you're already swamped with work. An assertive response might be, "I understand this project is important, but I have several projects that require my immediate attention. Can we revisit this once I've cleared my current workload?" Now let's move on to clarity. Clarity is key when saying no. You don't want to leave room for misinterpretation or false hope. Be clear, concise, and to the point. If you're saying no, say it in a way that leaves no room for doubt. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but with practice it will become easier. Lastly, understand your boundaries. Knowing your limits is crucial in the art of saying no. You can't be everything to everyone, and that's okay. By understanding your own boundaries, you can make decisions that align with your priorities and values. Now, here's a bit of humor for you. There was once a man named Bob who decided to practice these techniques. He started saying no to everything, from extra work to social invitations, even to his wife's request to take out the trash. Well, let's just say that Bob's results were a little mixed. He did manage to free up a lot of his time, but he also ended up sleeping on the couch for a week. So, while it's important to say no when necessary, remember to balance it with a healthy dose of yes. Saying no is a tool to protect your time, energy, and boundaries, but it's not meant to isolate you from others or shirk your responsibilities. Remember, it's not about being rude, it's about setting clear boundaries. Believe it or not, there's a science to saying no. Intrigued? Stick with us. Let's dive into the fascinating world of psychology and neuroscience. Ever wondered why it's so hard to utter that simple 2-letter word no? Well, it turns out that our brains are wired for social connection, and saying no can feel like a threat to these connections. It's like our brains are playing a game of Tetris, trying to fit in as many yeses as possible to keep the social puzzle complete. In fact, our brains release oxytocin, the so-called love hormone, when we cooperate and say yes. This hormone makes us feel good and strengthens social bonds, but when we say no, we might feel like we're breaking those bonds, and that can lead to a sense of isolation or guilt. It's like the brain's version of FOMO, fear of missing out on those warm, fuzzy oxytocin feelings. Now let's add another layer of complexity, the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of our brain responsible for decision-making and social behavior. It's like the CEO of our brain, constantly weighing the pros and cons. When the prospect of saying no comes up, the prefrontal cortex goes into overdrive, assessing potential social fallout and personal guilt against the benefits of setting boundaries. So you see, saying no is more than just a verbal action. It's a complex psychological and neurological process, a delicate dance between our desire to maintain social connections and our need for personal boundaries. But here's the good news. Like any dance, it can be learned. With practice, we can train our brains to see saying no not as a threat, but as a healthy and necessary part of life. It's all about setting boundaries and valuing our own time and energy. And remember, every time you say no to something you don't want, you're saying yes to something you do. It's not about being negative, but about creating space for the things that truly matter. So, the next time you struggle to say no, remember, it's not you, it's your brain. Let's take a look at some success stories of those who've mastered the power of no. Imagine a young woman named Sarah, fresh out of college and eager to make a splash in the corporate world. She soon found herself overwhelmed with responsibilities, working late into the night and struggling to keep up with the demands of her job. Then one day, she decided to say no. She declined a project she knew would stretch her too thin. Yes, her boss was surprised, but he respected her honesty and her ability to set boundaries. Today, Sarah is a thriving professional, known for her quality work and her ability to manage her time effectively. Then, there's Jack, a successful entrepreneur. When he first started his business, he tried to please everyone, saying yes to every client request, even the unreasonable ones. Over time, he realized that this strategy was hurting his business more than helping it, so he started to say no. He said no to unreasonable demands, to clients who didn't respect his team's time, and to projects that didn't align with his business goals. The result? A more focused, profitable business and a happier team. And who could forget the tale of Martha, a retired teacher who discovered the joy of painting in her golden years. When her paintings started getting attention, many people wanted her to paint their portraits. But Martha knew she loved painting landscapes more than anything, so she said no to portrait requests and focused on what she loved. Not only did she find fulfillment in her work, but her landscape paintings also became quite popular, earning her a small fortune. Now, for a little humor. Think about Ben, a man who loved his peace and quiet. One day, his chatty neighbor invited him to a never-ending neighborhood meeting. Ben politely declined, saying he had other plans. His other plans? A quiet night in with a good book and his favorite cup of tea. And guess what? That night he won an online contest he'd entered on a whim. His prize, a lifetime supply of his favorite tea. As you can see, saying no can sometimes open doors you never knew existed. Let's recap what we've learned about the power of no. You see, no isn't just a two-letter word, it's a magical phrase that can transform your life, and we've discovered just how. We started our journey by understanding the power of no. It's not about negativity or being uncooperative, but rather about setting boundaries and prioritizing your well-being. It's the secret key to unlocking a healthier, happier, and more balanced life. Then we delved into the art of saying no. It's a skill, like painting or playing the piano. It requires practice, finesse, and a dash of courage. We learned the importance of being assertive yet respectful, of standing our ground yet maintaining relationships. And let's not forget our favorite technique, the compliment sandwich. Layer a firm no between two slices of kindness, and voila, you've got yourself a palatable rejection. From art we move to science. We now know that our brains are wired to please, which makes saying no feel uncomfortable. But the beauty of the human mind is its ability to adapt and evolve. With practice, we can rewire our brains to embrace the power of no and reduce that guilt we often feel. We heard some inspiring success stories, didn't we? Remember Steve, the workaholic lawyer? His no to overtime and yes to family time transformed not only his personal life but also improved his work performance. Or take Lisa, the ever-accommodating friend whose no to constant favors allowed her to focus on her own needs and aspirations. Isn't it amazing how one small word can make such a big difference? It's like the butterfly effect, but with less chaos and more personal growth. And let's not forget the humor in it all. After all, who knew saying no could be so entertaining? So the next time you're faced with a decision, remember, it's okay to say no. After all, a no to something is a yes to something else.